So, welcome to Radix, where we talk all things radical. My name is Dan Benishai, and usually I have with me Aya. She's not here today, but instead we have Alon.
Hi.
And by way of introduction, I thought I would tell people how I met you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we don't know each other for a long time, but we've hit it off right away. And the context for our getting to know each other was the 7th of October. Um, so generally, I think, first of all, if you're new to the podcast, we live between the river and the sea. We were born and raised Jewish Zionists, and we are not
I don't know
Zionists.
if I was raised Zionist.
Come
I
on,
didn't really.
come on.
We'll talk about.
Oh, you know what? That's a okay. That's a good point to talk
We
about.
did say. You say.
All right. So, yeah. But anyway, we were born and raised in a Zionist society.
Yes, in a Zionist society, I agree.
And we are definitely today not Zionists. Some would even say we are anti-Zionists.
Yeah.
That's an interesting topic to talk about in itself. But in any case, I just wanted to say that even before the 7th of October, this was a very lonely mode of existence to be a
Yeah.
non-Zionist in Israeli society. After the 7th of October, I mean, look, Israeli society was already very right-wing. It's a very right-wing society. It's a complicated society. It has different segments. It has a more liberal part, but the whole complex is to the right of what you would find definitely in Europe and even in the United States, because this is the front line. This is the outpost of US imperialism. Everything is on steroids here in terms of Western civilization against the barbarians and all of that. So it's a very right-wing society. After the 7th of October,
It shifted even more to the right.
totalitarian.
Yeah.
Just totalitarian. And we can make a whole podcast about what was that like in the first months after the 7th of October.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say that the loneliness became insane because even people that we thought we might be close to in opinions in everyday life, everything split. People realized where they are quickly after the 7th of October. And we lost so many friends and therapists and family, just became completely alone. But on the other hand, it's as if the whole crowd went like this and we stayed out, kind of, and then
Yeah.
we stuck out from the crowd and then we saw each other. So there's not many of us, but suddenly we see each other
Yeah.
because of the 7th of October. Things are very clear. And then we were like on social media, we're like, hey, who's this guy? And who's Elik, Alon's friend with whom they make a podcast together.
Two podcasts actually.
Two
at
podcasts.
this
You
point.
wanna plug it in?
Yeah, let's plug it.
Because I
So
have so many viewers, you should plug into this.
yeah. We're gonna jump up in the subscriptions now.
Sure.
We have the One State Solution podcast on my channel, which is called the Hebrew Canaanite, and there's another podcast on Eric's channel, Sound of Anarchy, which is called Yala. So please tune into that and watch it if you haven't watched it yet. I promise good content.
Yeah, and me and Aya, we were on an episode of one of those.
Of Yala, yes.
Yeah, which was the best episode. Go check it out.
Yes, it was episode 3, I think. Yes, 3. Go watch that episode and no other episode.
Yeah, where we tell our story, how we became radicalized and all that.
Yeah.
So that's how we met. We saw each other, we contacted each other, and we hit it off instantly. Me, you, Aya, Tamara, and Eric.
Tamar is my girlfriend.
And yeah, and so we met. We are like-minded people. That's what allowed us to hit it off so much.
Mhm.
We consider ourselves, I guess, radical. We'll talk about this in a
Yes,
minute.
we'll talk about that.
But everything we talk about is, of course, Israel-Palestine, Israel-Palestine,
Yeah.
Israel-Palestine. And I opened, inspired by you, I opened this channel, whatever this is, Radix, where we talk all things radical. And yet all I talk about is Israel-Palestine, Israel-Palestine. So we wanted to challenge ourselves. And
Yeah.
Alon and I agreed that we're going to make this episode together and we're going to talk and we're going to be political and radical and all of those things, which we're going to try to not talk, definitely not to start from Israel-Palestine. And I have no idea what that would look like because we are so engulfed in everything
Yes.
that's going on here. And it is a subject that I feel more knowledgeable about, so it's more comfortable for me to just stick into this. But I do want to talk about the big picture. There's a big picture here.
Yeah.
So let's try. Let's see what happens. Maybe it's a
I just want to say one word about that. Like I think there are two types of things that we can talk about. There are important things and there are urgent things. And sometimes what is urgent is also important, and sometimes what is important is also urgent. But I feel like the Palestine, Israel, Zionism, genocide, Gaza issue, it is very important, but it's mainly urgent right now. There's like a
Insanely.
yeah, there's like a spike, like you talked about. Something is changing very rapidly right now. Something is happening right
History is
now.
happening.
Yes. So I feel like it is a subject that is on our minds a lot because of this. But there are subjects that I think are more important, like objectively speaking. Like this is, like for example, I want to tell a small story, okay? From I think it was November or December of last year, so a few weeks after the events of October 7th, and we were at a protest in the center of Tel Aviv. I think we haven't met yet
Oh yeah,
officially,
we were in the same
but we
protest.
didn't.
We didn't know each other.
Okay,
Right?
yeah.
So this was the first anti-war demonstration in Israel. Is this what
I'm talking about a different one
Okay,
that
so
was in Kaplan. I'm talking about a different one. I
Okay.
think you weren't in that. It was small, okay? And we met a few friends again, people who we got to know from this weird phenomenon that happened that all radical leftists started finding each other. Um, and we were like sitting in a bar after the protest and just talking about stuff, mainly about politics. And one guy was speaking with my girlfriend Tamar, and she was sitting next to me. I was speaking to Alec, and the other guy was speaking to Tamar, and uh, they were talking about the non-human animal holocaust. Okay, so the exploitation and slaughter of billions and billions and billions of animals every single year uh, in the entire world. And Tamar said that it was, in her opinion, way worse than what was going on in Gaza. And I think he was a little bit suspicious of her because he wasn't sure that she was a true leftist. Okay, and he thought that she was trying to belittle what was going on in Gaza. And I know for a fact, I know her very well, that she wasn't trying to belittle it. She was just saying, just objectively speaking, it's way worse. So they, me and Elik were in another conversation, and then they kind of turned to me and they said, and she asked me, Alon, what do you think about the comparison between these two things? And I didn't even have to think for a single second. I was like, yeah, of course, the animal holocaust is way worse in any parameter that you can think of, and by orders of magnitude. Okay, and then this guy was impressed because he like he knew that I cared about Gaza as much as anyone can care, and that I was actively trusted that I was not trying to belittle what was going on in Gaza. And this is the difference, you see.
And maybe just in
Yeah.
parenthesis to say
Yeah.
the argument here, not that the animal holocaust is worse than specifically what's going on in Gaza. It's worse than anything
Than
that
anything.
human beings have ever done to each
Yeah.
other ever.
Yeah, it's just it's
Anything that human beings are going to do to each other is ever going to compare to that. You can't imagine.
yes, just for the simple reason that the number of living people right now is around 8 billion, right? And this is the number of animals that are being slaughtered, non-human animals that are being slaughtered just in the meat, dairy, eggs industry within, I think, 1 month, around 1 month.
Yeah.
So every 1 month you have destruction and death at the level of like wiping out the entirety of humanity. So
And this is a comment to the quantity of this stuff.
yeah, just the quantity.
But look at the quality as well. Just being born and from the moment of your birth to being slaughtered, it is complete torture from here to here. And these are sentient living beings. They
Yeah,
feel
with-
what they're experiencing.
Yes, they
It's
are aware and they feel and they do not want to die and they try to struggle it and they cannot because they are weaker than us. And I think maybe if we want to talk about being radical, I think the thing that radicalized me the most was becoming aware more and more of the horrors of this industry and of the exploitation of animals, non-human animals, by human animals. And I think it's really weird to me that when people who are very much leftist and talk about what is going on in Gaza or against capitalism and so forth and so on, still cannot see what is going on, what humans are doing to animals and to other animals. You see, I try to make it a rule not to separate human animals from non-human animals. Like it's not humans and animals. It's human animals and non-human animals, other animals. This is just the way that just objectively biologically speaking, right? And and they use when leftists try to belittle, or they try to kind of justify what is going on to non-human animals, what is being done to non-human animals. They use the same arguments. They start sounding like Zionists. They start sounding like white supremacists, like Western supremacists, like sexists, like people who are part of the patriarchy.
So I want to bring attention that you mentioned two groups: people who are leftists in terms of human beings, in terms
Yes.
of Palestinians, for example, they will have a lot of compassion to what's going on in Gaza right now, who do not connect that to what's going on to animals. They don't find compassion, or they don't feel any urgency or importance of what's being done to animals, non-human animals at this moment. And on the other hand, people who do care about non-human animals and are active in that, and here in Israel,
Yes, here in Israel.
and are Zionists and can be genocidal
Yes.
towards the Palestinians.
Yes. Yeah, literal Nazis. Like literal Nazis, people who are talking like Nazis about Palestinians and who are activists for non-human animal rights. And I think neither group really understands deeply what being what being a radical leftist is all about. And I think like triangulating, like the way that I think we can radicalize ourselves in a deep way is looking at several different places where there is case studies where there is oppression, and triangulate between those cases, and then you see the deep thing that is underneath all of it. But I will just close my point. So I think that struggling against the non-human animal holocaust is way more important
and urgent in a sense, morally.
I don't know, but right now I feel that resisting what is going on in Gaza is more urgent because there is something historical happening, like you were saying, and this is why I'm investing most of my energies into that. And again, I want to emphasize so that no one can criticize me. I think what is going on in Gaza is horrible beyond any imagination, and it would be beyond my imagination if I didn't already know what was going on to non-human animals in the industries, which is objectively way worse.
Yeah. Okay. So as an offering of appeasement to anyone who is angry right now, I'm gonna say right away, I'm ethnocentric in my position. That's my prejudice. Like I know this. I know that I am so much more involved with what's going on to Palestinians, to human beings in general, than I am about non-human animals. And my language, I noticed that, and I noticed that more and more since I met you and Tamar, and you really opened. So just to say, even while I was Zionist, and even right-wing Zionists, kind of hardcore Zionists back in the day, I was aware that something horrible is happening to non-human animals. And I was, from the beginning, I never had any objection. It was clear to me that there's no argument against the argument that something horrible, unimaginable, just, and I didn't even need to hear the details. I was like, no, no, don't tell me, don't show me the pictures. I'll stop eating meat.
Exactly like you were about Zionism, right? You told us in the interview that you tried to like not talk, right?
Okay.
Like this kind of pushing away or is it a different kind of?
Maybe it's similar. Look, with Zionism, what you're referring to is my radicalization had a few phases, and at first, I wasn't thinking about Zionism. I was outside of Israel. I think that was important to me. I was in Germany. I learned another language, not English or Hebrew, the languages of Zionist US imperialism.
Yes.
German, and through that, I was exposed to literature that I just couldn't find in Hebrew or English, or I wouldn't find where I was kind of not in my circles. And I found this literature, it really opened my eyes about a kind of Marxist methodology of understanding history. At first, it was just intellectual and interesting. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, this works for me. This is such a good explanation. I want to understand the world this way. And I started looking at the world this way, but not about Israel-Palestine.
Yes.
And I think what stopped me here was the fear. I knew that once I would take this map, this theory, this way, this methodology, and apply it to Israel-Palestine,
You knew what you would find.
I suspected, I
Yeah.
knew I'm going to become, I'm going to say Hebrew word now, I'm going to become a Smolani. Smolani means leftist, but it's a slur, really.
Yeah.
In Israel, that's how right wing we are. It's a slur, and
Yes.
I was like, I don't want to be that person that I despise.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be despised.
I was called a Smolani as a slur, maybe thousands of times in my life, maybe more than that. I cannot count anymore. You know, but just like it's a habit now. It's something. It's a daily occurrence. You know, I don't even. It doesn't even register.
Doesn't register.
Yeah, I can't hear it anymore. The slur. I'm so used to it.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'll get there. I'm working. And for about a year, I didn't look at Israel-Palestine. Also, I had a lot on my plate. I needed to, already late in life, I was 30 something, 31 maybe, or 30 actually. And I needed to re-educate myself. I felt like everything I was taught was upside down.
Yes.
I need to relearn everything. So
it's not just distortion. It's not just a lie. It's just the reverse.
Yeah, the reverse.
They tell you the reverse.
Yeah. And so for a year, I had a lot on my plate. I needed to learn a lot. And yeah, I didn't want to look at Israel-Palestine. And then there was an attack on Gaza, 2021, way less worse than what's going on right now. And still, I was horrified.
Yes.
That's the first time I remember talking about Israel-Palestine. That's the first time I remember.
I said we're anarchists. We don't even follow our own rules.
That's true. That's the first time I remember people, or maybe the first time I was exposed to it. I needed to be maybe outside of the society to be exposed to it. People numbering the number of children killed. And I had just begun working with children. But let's go back to non-human animals. So I think it was different. Back when I was right-wing Zionist and all of that, it was just the body. It was just the feeling. I don't know. I don't know what it was that allowed me to feel what other people didn't feel. But right away I was like, I don't. There's no argument here. There's no possible argument that you can make against this case. That this is the most horrible moral thing that is happening in the universe. I can't imagine anything worse. But I was like, okay, I won't eat meat. And after a while, I'll try to cut back dairy. But that's it. Don't tell me about it. I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
And still ethnocentric till today in my language and everything.
Yeah.
And in a sense, like I have to be in a sense. I feel like in order to be sane, I have to be. If I were to weigh the suffering of non-human animals the same way I weigh the suffering of human beings, how would I live? If I felt the urgency of that Holocaust, the way I feel the urgency about Palestine right now, or about other horrible things that have happened to human beings, to Jews in World War II and other episodes, how do I even breathe? How do I eat? How do I exist?
I have some thoughts about that.
Yeah.
So I think this is true basically about every horrible thing that is happening. Like, I think that when we look at what is going on in Gaza, I don't know how to do the throaty RG thing, so I'm just saying Gaza.
All right. It's just a Hebrew resh.
Yeah.
With a bit of. So you say resh.
Reish.
All right. So say Gaza.
Gaza.
Now turn it a bit to a chet, like Gaza.
Gaza.
I think I'm not an expert.
So I don't want to say it wrong and then to embarrass myself.
Say Gaza.
I'm just saying Gaza. So these are the kinds of things that we have to deal with. Anyway,
we're going to learn Arabic, so it's going to change. Go ahead.
Yes, hopefully very soon. So when I think about this, I think we cannot fathom what is going on. Like our lives are normal, basically, even though we're surrounded by insanity. Our daily lives are basically normal, and we cannot imagine. And I think even like if I start really taking in to the maths, the severity and the gravity of what is going on, I would not be able to function.
That's true. We do that with everything.
Yes.
We have to.
I would just not be able to function. And I think this has to do with being radical. This is why I'm talking about this, because why is being radical so difficult? So there are several difficulties. And so one of them is that you start feeling disconnected from society, like we alluded to before. And The other is that you have to kind of take in how horrible some things that are happening are. Because being radical, I think, also means facing the truth. And the truth is, in many cases, in many aspects, very ugly, very difficult, very painful, and horrific, and unimaginably horrific. So, what I do, and I'm not saying that this is what everyone should do, I'm just saying what I do is I try to take in as much as I can with and while keeping my sanity. Well, it's not even sanity. It's sanity. I think is really looking at the truth. That defines sanity. But maybe
Your ability to function.
yes, just the ability to function. Yes, uh, and I make sure that it's enough so that my decisions and the way that I choose to conduct my life is as moral as possible, as aware as possible. And this is it's impossible to do it because like okay, so what if we took in completely what is going on? I would retire from human society completely. Like this is probably what I would. I don't know. I again, I'm afraid to look at it. I'm afraid to look at it right? Because what would I would have to remove all my clothes and just run to the forest and live in the forest on my own. I don't even know like what because what humanity is doing is perverse in so many different ways and in at levels that we cannot even imagine. So this is the kind of constant tension that you need to face when you go through the process of radicalizing yourself, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of ironic though. For me, I needed to go through radicalization in order to be in peace with humanity.
Okay. Explain this.
Well, because well, what is being radical? How would you
Yes,
formulate
I
it?
was going to suggest that we kind of talk about what it means because we've been talking around this.
What would you say it is to be
Okay,
radical?
so I have a spiel that I've
You
been
said
doing.
something before about triangulation,
Triangulating, yes,
triangulating,
yes,
where you said different case studies of oppression.
yes,
So for a minute there, I was thinking radicalism is about seeing all oppression wherever
yes.
it is. But then I thought it's not
It's
something.
not about that. I think seeing oppression is like a tool that we need to apply to kind of do the praxis of radicalism. It's
Mm.
I, I, I will first define
Yeah,
say what I think radicalism is about, and then I will say how oppression fits into that, how
yeah.
seeing oppression and opposing oppression fits into that. So I think being radical. So you explained in a previous video on this channel, right? That it comes from radix, right? The word radix means root. So you want to look at things, think about things from their roots, okay? And to me, this means that I look at reality, I look at what is going on around me, and I try to look at it with the least amount of filters possible. I try to see reality as clearly and accurately as I can. And I don't think that we are able. I don't think it's even a possible thing on a logical level, on a philosophical level, to see reality for what it is. I think that's a myth. By the way, a myth of enlightenment, right? Of the Enlightenment movement, that you can see reality for what it is. But I do think that you can work on yourself to remove the distortions and the filters. So I try to see reality as accurately as I can. I try to see the problems in reality as accurately as I can. And I try to imagine a different reality, which is the best that I can take. And then I look at the gap between these two things, and this is where going to the root comes in, right? Because I'm not going to let anything that has been taught to me prevent me from going to the root, from seeing reality as clearly as I can, and from imagining reality as best as I can, and from seeing the gap as fully as I can. Okay. And then I go back and I say, okay, what can we do now to make this gap just slightly smaller?
Okay, I'm going to be devil's advocate.
Okay, yeah.
You make yourself vulnerable to the whole argument of utopianism.
Yes.
So to just imagine what is the best that is imaginable. What about taking into consideration circumstances, reality,
yes.
human nature, and
Yes, yes, human nature. Okay, so many times as I've been called a smolani, a leftist with stank on it, with a lot of stank on it. I've been called Yefen Nefesh, and Yefen Nefesh means what when people call me Yefen Nefesh, it literally means that I have a beautiful soul. But in Israel, telling someone that they have a beautiful soul is not
slur.
It's not a compliment. It's one of the worst.
It's contempt.
Yes, it's one of the worst slurs that you can experience. You have a beautiful. Imagine hearing someone saying you have a beautiful soul and being insulted deeply.
I wonder what's the history of that. I know Begin said that.
Yeah.
Maybe he made it popular, and he said it as a slur about, I guess, leftists or liberals or whatever.
Yeah.
He said something, those yafei nefesh.
Yes.
Yeah. So why is that a slur?
It's a slur because they're calling you naive and they're calling you an accomplice of the enemy. You do not understand that there is a war here, and the war is a basic fact of life, and it cannot be avoided. And because you are naive and stupid, and also you also want to feel good about yourself. You don't really care about making the world a better place. You are a liar, also. I
want to throw other words. So
yes.
You said naive.
Yes.
I want to say childish.
Yes, childish.
I want to say feminine.
Yes, patriarchy and
it's very much about that.
And Zionism and also carnism, the ideology of eating animals. They are all connected.
Yeah. So go ahead. So that's Yefen Nefesh, and you were called Yefen Nefesh?
Yes, I was called Yefen Nefesh many times. And also I was called utopian and naive, and it comes from the same place. It comes from the same place of conservatism. Like people, they want to keep things as they are. I think because they are afraid of change. This is what I think. Because they are afraid of change, and because they do not want to open their mind, and because they do not want to do this process that we started explaining how difficult it is, and they do not want to lose their position in society. They do not want to start thinking negative things about their society. They do not want to experience the pain of looking at reality for what it is, and so forth and so on. And they resent me for doing it and for bringing it to the table, for bringing it for raising these topics that are difficult for them and that they work very hard to repress. So they call me a utopianist, right? I don't think I'm a utopianist. I think that we don't want to prevent ourselves from imagining the best future possible. And this does not come in contradiction with being pragmatic. Okay, so I want to say again, the next step after imagining this beautiful future is going back to now, and going back to what is going on now, right now. Okay, and seeing reality, and seeing the obstacles, and seeing the difficulties, and seeing the things that are preventing us from reaching such a future, but not okay. So this is where my paths cross. I think it happens a lot earlier, but I think this is where my paths, the paths of me and conservatives, really diverges. Okay, like completely, because I don't want to let uh, the problems with reality now prevent me from trying to aspire to a genuinely, radically better future. And if you look at the contradiction, okay, look at the contradiction. Because things suck now, we cannot aspire to a better future. So where does this lead you? Where things suck. You know, so how is that pragmatic? We want how is that making anything better ever?
But it doesn't suck. This is the best time to be alive.
Mm.
Things are getting better and better. You think it's yeah, it's not perfect now, but you think it was good before. You think it was ever good. Look, I don't want to be. I
wanted to give the question back to you because I think you are much better at answering this question than me, because you have historical knowledge that I do not have. You went much more deeply into these questions.
That's interesting. So you said I want to imagine future. To me, it's history. It's looking back.
Yeah.
That allows me to be radical.
Yeah.
Future. So to that argument, if someone says you cannot just imagine an ideal, you have to consider reality. I'm like, yes, we need to imagine realistically. We need to imagine through a good and sober understanding of the world we live in, and
Yes.
society and human beings and history.
Yes.
And I agree with that. I just disagree with the argument that, well, the implicit in this argument is that the world, the way it is now, the way it has been, certainly for a few centuries since capitalism, there was class societies before capitalism, but capitalism is something unique and insane. And there is an assumption here that is, by the way, it's given to us. I want to say like a fifth, like it's
Trickled into our minds.
yeah, they trickle it into your mind through a lot of ways, in particular culture and your education. That what's happening is natural. It's part of the evolution of things and all that. So to me, like one of the case studies that helped me be radical was looking at the contact between European society and North American pre-Columbus or
Yes.
Post-Columbus. The contact was obviously from Columbus onwards.
Yes.
But that contact between those societies, North American civilizations and European society, is very interesting. There's very interesting documents about that. So you have radically different societies meeting each other and commenting about this radical difference.
Yes.
We don't have so much. Usually, it's the voice of the Europeans speaking that we have because they are writing history. They are the victors. They have writing. Sometimes we have Native Americans expressing their opinions, but then it's question. But it's through Europeans telling us what they said. So then it's questionable what they said, and so on.
There's you're saying there's almost no documentation of like actual Native Americans actually saying what they
from
thought
those
at the time.
days, from those early days. I
Okay.
wonder. I'm not an expert, but
Okay.
I feel like it's certainly even when I find, for example, what did Native American think about the Europeans that they met? It's always some European who got to know them who is telling us,
Yes.
telling this story for
And
them.
maybe it's distorted because of the different lens, because
Maybe.
there's such a difference, because there's such a gap.
Yeah, maybe. But even if you just look at what Europeans said,
Yeah.
so both sides to this contact agree that there is a radical difference between these societies, and I think both sides agree that it has something to do with freedom and equality. Now, the evaluation of this may differ. So, example, some Europeans would say those natives, they're so equal and free in a bad way. They are undisciplined. They are promiscuous. They are godless. Yeah, they don't have respect to authority, right?
Yes, yes,
But
yes.
but
I
still,
want to say a few things about respect, okay? This word respect. We talk about Israeli society, and we did not keep our promise at all, not talking about Israel and Palestine. But it's in our minds, and I think it's a good case study, as we said, and I think it exposes things about radicalism in a radical thinking in a more broad sense. So Israeli society made me allergic to the word respect because the way I think maybe it's very widespread, but I know about what is going on here. The way that I've heard the word respect in my childhood was always in the following context: there is something that you don't want to do, other people want you to do it, and we do not respect. This is the real respect. We don't care that you don't want to do it. We want you to do it anyway, and we're trying to manipulate you into doing it anyway. This is the way that I've heard the word respect, like for 100% of the times that it was used with me in my childhood. And then I started thinking that respect was a negative thing. And look at the toxicity of this, because it took me a very long time, and I'm speaking about decades, to reclaim this concept of respect. And I think I'm not finished. I think I'm not finished because I still have some like allergic reaction when I think about respect, and it's very hard for me to differentiate between the fake respect, the manipulative respect that has been forced into my psyche in my childhood, and the actual respect that I want to feel towards everyone all people, all animals, all nature, all of creation. This is the true respect that I want to feel, and it's harder for me to feel it because of how they try to manipulate and control.
Yeah, the word is usually used as submission to authority.
Yes,
Submit to
yes,
authority.
yes.
And I think yeah, look, I'm a bit all over the place, but fuck it.
This is the way we do things when we're writing, right?
I guess.
Oh, or you try to be ordered.
No, when I write, certainly it needs to be like this.
Yeah.
But fuck it, we're just talking.
Yeah.
So, you talked about growing up and they put this idea of respect on you, and it feels wrong to you. And I think a lot of us have that, and some of us we have to go through a process where we learn to accept it. And if we are successful in that process, we will be happy, somewhat happy, members of society with some symptoms. We might be neurotic, we might have to take antidepressants, we might feel some ailments that we're not sure. But generally, we're kind of, this is my society, I'm cool. And some of us just don't go through that. Something doesn't work, and we just suffer more and more and more, and we don't understand what is our place in this world, and so on. And if everything that is going on is natural, I doubt that you would have this phenomenon in such a quantity.
Yes.
And so to go back to my radicalization story, before I had the ideas of being radical, while I accepted the whole story that what's going on is natural, and if anything, today's the best day to be alive, and yet I'm so depressed, I'm so addicted, I'm so alone, I'm so all these things.
Yes.
Um, and I, I'm in peace, like I told you in that episode that I was on your episode. I was in peace with the world. I accepted the world for what it was, and I was in war with myself.
Yes.
And radicalism told me, wait, let's go back to the world. Let's not just accept that. Through learning history, through saying, oh, this is actually constructed. Well, there's a system here. It's constructed. It has a history. It wasn't always there. And you see this transparent thing. Suddenly you see it slowly. It's very till today. It's very difficult, but you start to see this is actually being made. This is being created. This is artificial. It's being made for certain interests and so on, and it creates all these problems and these symptoms, including my own personal suffering. Not to mention insane suffering all over the world.
Yes.
Not to mention non-human animals.
Yes.
It's really dystopian. It's not that, here's my answer. It's not that we are utopian. I'm actually a dystopian in that I see the dystopia that we live in. This is dystopian. There's something completely off balance. It's not, I'm not asking for something. I'm not saying, look, things are so-so. They're kind of okay. There's kind of not okay, but they're imperfect. I want perfection. I'm not saying that. I'm saying things are monstrous.
Yes.
And you know it, whoever you are looking at this.
Even you're trying to deny it, this is why you're so upset with us, right?
You know it, because you are also depressed or addicted. You know that something here is wrong. And so many suicides and so many millions of human beings have to be kept in cages. And millions of human beings on the, I don't know if millions, but so many on the streets. And I'm not even talking about the non-human animals, which is just insane.
Yeah. If you try to consider that, you immediately will see how deranged it is.
So some of us feel that in our bodies. I think all of us feel it.
I think all of us.
But some of us feel it to the point where we are dysfunctional.
Yes.
And we have to find something else. And then
again,
yeah, but like almost suicidal in my case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only answer was to flip things and to go, oh, actually, I'm okay. My body is okay. I should be feeling what I'm feeling, considering everything that is around me and everything that I am subjected to. There's a context here, and the world is not okay. There's something happening here, and I want to study what's happening here. And it wasn't always like this. And so when I look at this meeting between European civilization and North American civilization, and there's these quotes, and I look at these quotes and I'm amazed. I'm going to tell you what I find in these quotes in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how I show people those quotes. Okay, let me tell you what the quotes are.
Yeah.
So it's usually Jesuit, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Jesuit missionaries.
Yes.
Going into,
I think it's Jesuit.
Jesuit missionaries going into North American societies, learning their language, getting to be acquainted with them, and they live testimonies about them. And they say things like, oh my God, they don't beat their children. And their women have a lot of freedom. They know of all kinds of plans to abort a pregnancy if they're not interested in pregnancy.
Wow! So this issue of abortion, it goes back to.
But this is with Aya. She knows so much about it. It's fascinating.
My mind. This is the way that knowing history. Like every single. I will say some
Yeah,
things
go ahead.
about the way that you opened my mind and that historians in general opened my mind. But please finish the point. I have some thoughts about that.
So this is the Jesuits talking about North American societies. They don't beat their children. They have contraception. The women can divorce. Now, who are we talking about here exactly? There were many civilizations in North America. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to be. I don't want to be simplistic, but they do say these things about certain
Yeah.
tribes that I honestly I don't remember the names. I'm not an expert about this, but they say this, that, and they say that the Native Americans, they laugh at us, the Europeans, when they see how much respect we give to our captains, and they say we only respect our captain, that is our chief, our source of authority, as long as he can convince us that what he's saying is like we have people with authority, but they are people that we respect their wisdom and they need to convince us. And if they
Yeah.
don't convince us, also they mentioned this. A lot of these quotes, by the way, just if you want, and maybe you've read the book, The Dawn of Everything.
I heard about this book. I haven't
Wonderful
been
book,
reading it yet.
wonderful, interesting, important book by two anthropologists, Graeber
Yes.
and the other guy, Winslow.
Okay.
Graeber and Winslow. I hope I'm pronouncing the names right. The Dawn of Everything,
Pretty sure.
very famous. They don't need me to, with my huge following on YouTube. They're doing okay. But I just want to say, if you want to read more, a lot of this is from there. A lot of really interesting sources. And they say these things. And they say, oh, another thing they say is how eloquent the Native Americans are. Just everyday people are so eloquent. Not just their philosophers, not just their leaders, all of them. And they actually laugh at us about they laugh at our way of argumentation. They say
Yes.
this is illogic. The way that you're intellectually so weak, and this is very interesting to me. And they use the term noble savage, the very
Yes.
famous term. And in Graeber and Winslow, if that's those are
Yeah,
names,
I think it's correct.
okay. I saw the argument. I don't remember where they based this on, but this sounds very plausible to me. The noble savage, this idea, it doesn't mean this utopian, oh, they're savages, they're savages, like we Europeans consider them savages, and they're noble, they're beautiful, they're naive, they're childish. It doesn't mean that. Noble means they are like the nobility. They are like the aristocracy that we know in Europe. Why? Because in Europe, you have a class society, you have the huge mass of people, huge majority working the land and given some share from the produce to the lords, to the aristocracy, and their aristocracy, the noblemen, they don't work for a living. That's the whole point. All they do is fight in wars and hunt, and they have a lot of free time to develop their capabilities. And now Europeans come to North America and they say, well, everyone here are aristocracy. Everyone here
As opposed
is
to
noble,
slaves, basically.
um, as opposed to the separation. This is what happened not just in Europe, but this is something that happened and that has birthed European society eventually that didn't happen as much. It's not black or white, but it didn't happen as much in North American societies at the time of contact. This consistent and um, escalating separation of the workforce, the labor force of human beings and their own discretion and decisions. You are run by other people.
Yes.
And we take this for granted.
To me, this is the definition of slavery. What is slavery? Working for other people.
And
Not deciding what you do with your own autonomy.
And so you see these quotes, and when I show these quotes and I say, look, these people, they didn't have that. They were very egalitarian. I'm not saying perfect. I'm not saying there was no violence. I'm not saying it's not about that. But there wasn't something like a class society. Um, and even if there was, it wasn't as stable and consistent as it was in Europe. It was more fluid. It was so flexible. And a lot of these specific tribes, or nations, I should say, that the Europeans met, they are described as being extremely free, extremely egalitarian, very happy, very beautiful, very strong, very healthy, and very intelligent.
Yes.
Because they were fully human, as opposed to this process of um, division of labor, where no, you don't develop your intellectual skills, you just work the land. So you're very strong and very stupid. I'll run things. I'm the smart guy. I'll run things for us. Now I'm very weak physically, yeah, and so on and so forth. So they didn't have that. They were like fully humans, and they all sang and they all knew music. It wasn't just you're the musician, you're the expert, right? We all do it. We're all fully human, and they were amazed at that. Now, here's the point. I wanted to say all of this, say a lot of things, but one of the things is when I show these quotes to people, I say, look, it doesn't have to be the way like the human beings can exist in other ways, can relate to each other and to nature in radically different ways. They say this is utopian.
Yes.
And And here's what they blame me. They say, "Oh, you don't mention the fact that they did have wars, that they did there wasn't equality, full equality between male and female. There wasn't this is." And I'm saying, no, I'm not saying those things. I acknowledge those things, but I'm also saying, look at this.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
also had, yeah, they had. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm not saying there wasn't violence. I think there was torture. They had a custom of when you capture an enemy, you can torture them. They had some things that you're like, oh my God, I don't want to live in a place where this might happen to me.
yeah,
But they also had this. Look at this. Isn't this wonderful? They
yeah,
didn't work for anyone. Oh my God. Like,
yeah,
I want to kill myself because I live in a society where I have to go and submit to someone if I
yeah,
want to survive.
yeah,
And this someone is just going to use me for a purpose that is not my own. And the
yes,
idea of I can survive, I can feed myself, I have access to the means of production, I have access to natural resources.
yeah,
It's not owned by someone who tells me, look, I have everything. If you want to eat, if you want to share of this, you better submit to me or to someone else. You can choose. This is your freedom. You can choose who to submit to. You can go and compete with other seekers to be exploited by someone
in the free market.
in the free world. This is free labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost my.
Okay.
Okay,
I
go
want
ahead.
to kind of collect all the things that we were talking about because I think there's some very important lessons to be learned here, and I want to make them more explicit. I want to start with the whole thing of utopia, right? So they say you are a utopianist, and look, they still say it when you're actually describing reality,
Mm.
right? And this brings me to kind of the difference between us, but the difference that I really love, okay? This is why I like talking to you, because I feel like you can illuminate things that for me, I'm just ignorant, okay? I'm just ignorant of history because I've been made ignorant of history. They did not teach me the history, they taught me lies. And I will come back to that in a moment or two. And then people can tell me you're a utopianist, you are a Yefe Nefesh, a beautiful soul, and they can fool me. They can leave me in a place where I don't have a lot of good answers because yes, I don't know, but we need to imagine something better. I can say this,
Mm.
but then they say no, you're just stupid. You don't understand anything. But then when you look at history, you have like this. No, this happened. This existed, or things like this existed, and at least you can say what you said that the situation now we can see how horrible it is because we can compare it to other things that actually existed that were definitely better in many ways. Okay, so this is and now I want to go back to the thing that you touched upon, like the future and the past. Okay.
Can I put something in
Yes. Yes.
here? Can you remember this point?
Yes.
Because you just said something important, and this is another thing that I think is very important to understand in answering these objections. A lot of times they say their questions assume things that we need to illuminate. It's
Yes.
very important.
We need to
So
expose it.
when they say, "Look, we live in an imperfect world," who are you to design a more perfect world? You might just ruin everything. And there's an assumption here. There's an assumption here that the society we live in today is a kind of solution to a problem.
Yes.
Like there's a problem of resources, how are we going to distribute, and there's a kind of solution, and it's imperfect, but there's good things about it.
This is the way economists look at things,
Yeah,
right?
society is just a solution to a problem. And here's the thing: what we see is not a solution, an imperfect solution to a problem. What we see is oppression. We see rape. We see murder. We see displacement, and so it's not that things are imperfect and could be better. It's that there are crimes happening and they need to be stopped.
Yes.
And what would that look like? How then we would solve the problem of distributing the resources among us? I would love to see. I don't know. Let's get there. But let's stop murdering, raping, pillaging, because that's what our society is built on. Now, you can disagree with me that the society, and then we'll talk about history and what capitalism is and so on. I think I can show you. I think it's provable. But don't let's not accept the assumption, because sometimes even radicals do, of they say, okay, it's imperfect, we can do better. And I'm not even saying that. I'm saying we need to stop the monstrosity that's happening right now. It's not that we can do better. It's not that we can be more flourishing and so on. Yes, but the important thing we could, but the important thing is it's even when you say, look, there's good things about capitalism, there's bad things about capitalism. That's like saying, look, I'm sorry, trigger warning. There's good things about rape, there's bad things about rape. There's a good thing about rape. Someone satisfied their sexual need. They're satisfied now. Yeah, it came. This is now if capitalism, if the good things in capitalism are at the expense of other victims,
Then they're not good.
Then they're not good.
Then they're not good.
There's
Just by
nothing
definition.
good about this. It's just a crime, and the crime needs to stop. And it's not about being utopian. It's not about there's a problem and there's a solution here that is imperfect, but let's stick to it because if we'll try to fix it, we might ruin
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's how they think. No, there's not a problem, and this is a solution. There's a war going on.
Yes.
There's a war going on. There are people with power using that power to abuse other people for
Yes.
their own benefit, and this needs to stop. Not to mention that.
Yes, exactly. And at the end of every sentence that a leftist says, there should be this add-on.
Disclaimer.
Yes, this disclaimer, not to mention non-human animals. And my problem with many, many leftists is that you do not uh, uh, add this disclaimer. Why? Because you do not care about non-human animals, and that makes you no different from any other kind of supremacist. It makes you no different from a Zionist, because a Zionist will say, yes, I talk about the problems in my own Jewish society, and I want equality in my own Jewish society, and I don't care about who is outside the group that I define to be the group that matters. And you're doing the exact same thing, which makes you a supremacist. And if you are not a supremacist, then you will talk about leftist issues, and at the end you will say, honestly, not to mention non-human animals, because you will devote at least a fraction of your energy and time into this subject as well. Okay, so I will continue the point about future and past.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the difference in the way that each of us approaches these questions. And to me, growing up, I said I don't like history. What did I mean? What I meant is that I don't like history lessons in the capitalist Israeli Zionist education system. This is what I meant. And for many, many years, I explained to people, I am a mathematician in my training, okay? And again and again and again, I would explain to people who told me I would explain to them, no, you don't like the way you were taught the thing that is accidentally called math because it was designed by this, that was taught to you by this weird system. But I try to look at my own, defects, and I try to see that when I say I don't like history, this is what I mean as well. And when I started becoming more and more aware to what real historical research and historical discussion is about, I started liking history, or I discovered that I like history. And what is the difference? The difference is that the history that I was taught is just a bunch of lies used for propaganda to wash my mind, to make me behave. And real history is something that opens your mind, that it is the truth, and it is a truth that we engage in to open our minds and to understand what was, so that we can also see what is, and also think about what will and can be. Okay, so this is why I like history now, and I love history when you talk about history. But also I want to say that in some sense you don't need history to be radical. Okay, I think there are like two different paths that you can take. That one of them is what the practice that I used to have, which is using my imagination, okay, and imagining possible futures and aspiring towards them. And another path that you can take is looking back at the past and seeing the possibilities in the past. And they are not mutually exclusive. Actually, they work amazingly together, and they enrich each other, and doing both of them makes you much more strong and grounded in what you are doing. It's like in yoga, where you so in yoga there's like this thing where I will try to demonstrate, where you stand and then you press your, oh, no one can see me here, so you press your feet to the ground, and then using this you can elevate the crown of the head, and this is simultaneous, right? It's like the pushing down also helps you to push up, like this. It's simultaneous, and I think this is the same thing that we can do with history and future. Like going back to history helps you imagine a better future. Imagining the future helps you go back to history and see it for what it was. So it kind of works together in harmony. So this is the two different things that I think that we can bring, and I think this is why we enjoy conversations with each other so much.
Yeah, and I do lack the future.
Mm.
Um, Mostly I go back to history and I look at the present, and it allows me to criticize the present, but not so much to imagine a future. And I think, being so much in the world of actuality as opposed to potential,
Yes,
being in the actual can be very uh, discouraging. So I do tend to pessimism
yes,
in a weird way. But in the core, I'm optimistic, and this is radical. Being radical is being optimistic to me.
yes.
This is so now. This is an opportunity to go back to a different point where I was at some point arguably suicidal because I didn't want to submit to an authority, and just the fact that I can say this today and only feel partially ashamed that I don't want to submit to someone else's authority.
That's amazing progress.
That's amazing progress.
Yes.
I should be not ashamed at all.
Yes.
It should be obvious that human
Yes.
beings should not submit to another person. But
Let me say it a different
Yeah.
way, just to the audience, please. Being radical is being connected to yourself. Being radical is not submitting to anyone who tells you how you should be, how you should behave, what you should do, and what you should think. Being radical, I think, is a very empowering thing. And people present it as like those leftists are collectivists and we are individualists and we make ourselves amazing. But no, I think when you are being individualists, you are not empowering yourself. You are actually falling into the trap of serving other people who lie to you that by serving them, you are empowering yourself. And this is exactly what cults do. And conservatism and capitalism and supremacy is a kind of cult. So please don't fall into this cult.
There was a moment where liberal society, where bourgeois society,
Yeah.
it was still an up and coming class. So it was a radical class. It wasn't yet powerful and corrupted. And liberalism originally and libertarian thought originally was very radical.
Yes.
And in this book, The Dawn of Everything, Graeber and Winslow, they connect the development of this thought with the meeting of North American societies. So people looking at that going, oh, you mean we can live in a society where not only a minority gets to be the nobles who don't submit to an authority and therefore are allowed to be fully human, but everyone can be a noble savage, right? That idea that it was inspired by them. And this whole individualism and liberalism, libertarianism was corrupted tremendously since then. But there was a moment, I want to give an homage, or not homage, give my respects to liberal
This is
thought
true
in
respect.
its inception.
This is true respect.
True
This is the difference. This is the difference between respect and respect.
Interesting.
And this brings me to another point that I wanted to raise. I want to really, we're talking about being radical, we're talking abstractly. Let's do it very concretely. And I think we can, just this example that came up in our conversation, the term respect. One of the things that helped me radicalize myself was that I looked at terms, I looked at words, and I was like, okay, what does it really mean? And this corruption that we talk about, the people in power, they take elements of thought, elements of human existence, elements of existence in general, and they corrupt everything. They corrupted the word justice, the term justice, they corrupted the term democracy, they corrupted the term freedom, they corrupted everything, and they also corrupt the term
defense is corrupted.
Yes, defense.
What does it mean to defend?
They invert everything and corrupt everything. They corrupt self-empowerment, right? Everything.
Feminism.
Yes, everything, everything. So if you want to be radical, you have to go back to the original meaning of things. And I think we
to the root.
Yes, to the root of things. And I think we can just do this on the word respect, on the term respect. Okay? So what does respect mean?
What?
Does respect mean that I submit to an authority? No, it doesn't. It doesn't click with me at all. Why would it mean? And then when you start, you look at this term from the outside. You say, okay, I will try. First of all, I want to dissolve everything that I was taught. First of all, I want to say I do not have any assumptions now. I try to make myself as clean from assumptions as possible. And I think that my mathematical training really helped me with that. Because when you do mathematics, if you don't do this thing, you will be very wrong very often. And you will know that you are, because mathematics makes things very sharp. Okay, it's like when you're wrong, it stares you in the face and it hits you in the face when you are wrong in mathematics. This is why it is a useful tool. Okay, so and then so it taught me how to not have any assumptions because I had assumptions. I arrived at wrong conclusions. I got slapped in the face by math, and I was like, okay, what happened? And I looked at what happened, and I was like, okay, I had this assumption. So it taught me to try to avoid assuming things as much as I can. Okay, so let's not assume anything about the term respect and rethink what it means. And then this opens up something where you can sometimes have a glimpse of what real respect is. Okay, and you can think, of, okay, when did I truly feel respect in my life, being respected or being respectful, and and then you can start thinking of the moments where you had a true interaction with someone, which is egalitarian, right? Which is mutual, which is characterized by sensitivity, by compassion, by being mindful of the other person, listening to what they're saying. This characterizes true respect. And then this deformed notion of respect becomes so ugly. In comparison, you're just like, oh, okay, so this is not respect.
You know what this is like?
Yeah.
I used to, like you, I guess, growing up, we read a lot of popular science, and I read about a lot about the brain, and it's very interesting how when things go wrong in the brain, when there's a stroke or something, you realize how the brain works. It's really interesting. So here's a story that I read once. Um, there's some people who have some kind of brain damage. Um, what was it? Oh yeah, half of their face or maybe the whole body is goes limp, like they don't have the nerves go bad or something. So half of their face when they talk, they have facial expression only in half of the face, and the other half is limp.
Okay.
But then you tell them a joke, and if it's really funny, the whole face lights up. It all lights
That's
up.
amazing.
Now, if you tell them smile right now, they can't. Only half of the face will smile. But you tell them a joke, boom, everything lights up. And the explanation to this is there's different areas in the brain that control true laughter as opposed to voluntarily moving the muscles of the face.
The fake thing, yeah.
And this is why smiling to the camera, for me and a lot of other people, doesn't work. When it's
Yeah.
not genuine. So superficially, this is a smile and this is a smile. But the quality of the experience on the inside is different, and it's actually
The
different.
root of the thing is different.
Is
We
different.
go back to roots every single time.
So what respect means in a class society as opposed to an egalitarian society, it may look superficially similar, but the quality of it, the beauty of it, the aesthetics of it, the place in the brain that controls it is different.
Yes.
And we can do this with respect. We can do this with art, with music, with science. We started
With
talking
peace, like
peace.
Martin Luther King. My favorite quote by Martin Luther King talks about negative peace and positive peace. And negative peace is this fake, superficial thing, while positive peace is the presence of justice. It's much deeper than that. You need to go deeper and see true peace, not the fake peace. And liberals, we criticize liberals a lot. And I think liberals, one of the things that characterizes this ideology of liberalism is insisting on focusing on the. I want to close the door.
Yeah, it's making noise.
So what characterizes liberalism is focusing only on the superficial aspects of things, and this is why they want videos to look good and to be well edited, and they don't care about the actual content that is expressed in the video. And this is why, as anarchists, we want to rebel against this and make our videos look bad on purpose, just to break this kind of assumption that you have to make the videos look good.
But then they take that and they put that in a plastic box.
Yes. They take the radical aesthetic and
Yeah.
they can corrupt everything. Corruption corrupts everything. It can corrupt everything that happens, and this is why you have to be constantly vigilant.
Yeah, constantly on light on the toes.
Yes.
This is why this fake peace of liberals, this is why we talked about this recently. I don't like the word peace anymore in the context of Israel-Palestine. I see how it's used by liberals, and they say peace, peace, peace. And I'm asking, what do you mean by peace? If you don't mean freedom and equality, then you don't mean peace. And if you say freedom and equality, then you've already said peace because there's no reason for war. So I don't say peace anymore. I say freedom and equality. Peace just means the absence of war. It could mean just the absence of war. But if that's based on inequality and oppression, then it's just temporary truce until violence breaks out.
Yeah. So this leads me to another point that I think being radical, or one of the tools that we can use as radicals, is reclaiming these terms, because we talked about how the oppressive society corrupts all the terms and deforms and distorts all the terms.
And I just want to say how
Yeah.
important that is, because we can talk about how centers of power use all kinds of means to propagate the consciousness that is beneficial to their interests.
Yes.
But one of the most important ones is language itself. And
Yes.
as a historian, 95% of my work, my deep work, is to decide which word to use. It's amazing how
Yeah.
language is important, and it's a constant work that I have to do on myself.
Yes, yes, and this leads me to this point that I think we need to work a lot on reclaiming these things. And I want to tell another like specific example for this. So I remember in history class, in school. Uh, this is way spicier than I thought before I started telling this story. Um, the teacher gave us an assignment, homework. And one of the questions was, well, they gave us a quote by the Duce. What's his name? Mussolini. Mussolini.
Or
Then
Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky was also called
really?
Yeah, one of those. A Zionist right-wing leader back in the day. Go ahead. That's Mussolini in Italy. Yeah, they're Jewish fascists.
And in every city in Israel, there is a Jabotinsky street. Just so
I want to say about the streets. We live
I
in.
will go back to the story, please.
Hold up. I want to say something about streets. Maybe in general,
Do a
especially
rant.
in Israel. I have to rant. I don't know if it's most of Israel, but maybe especially in this neighborhood in Haifa. We're in Haifa right now, and every street is this military unit, that military unit, the chova of the paratroopers, this and that. And I'm walking with Aya, and I'm realizing this is the street of this kind of killers, and this is the street of this kind of murderers, and this is the street of the murderers who were a green beret, and this is the street of the murderers who wore a red beret. And it's just insane how militaristic and violent everything is around here, but it doesn't appear that way to Zionists.
Yeah.
It doesn't. When you're inside, it doesn't appear that
To
way.
them, it's just like,
It's this beautiful.
these are the symbols of our culture, of our
the brave,
independence, of our.
beautiful, peace-loving killers.
Yeah. So let's do some empirical work. When Elik and I record our episodes of One State Solution in Yala, we are at Elik's place. This is in Hatikva neighborhood, the Hope. But the names of the streets in Hatikva neighborhood are things like Etzel,
Yeah.
which is a terrorist Zionist organization from back when.
Known as the Irgun for English speakers.
Okay, Etzel and Leshi.
Yeah.
And
the Sterngen. So
all the names. If I go over the map right now, I will tell you the names, and it's like 15 names of Jewish Zionist terrorist organizations from back when, and people who were at the head of these organizations. And also where I live, there is Hapalmach Street. That's another organization. It's all this. Okay, every city in Israel and every area in Israel, the norm is this. And if it's another thing, then it's outside the norm.
Yeah.
So the story. So they gave a quote by Mussolini, and I don't remember the exact quote.
In
this
school?
was yes, in school. This was maybe 20 plus years ago. Okay, more than 20 years. But the quote was about how democracy is bad because you let people who are ignorant and don't know what they should and don't know what is good and what is bad decide what should happen.
Yeah.
And they told the question was, the prompt was, explain to Mussolini why he is wrong. And this immediately triggered the rebellion. I was like, no, I refuse to do this. And he was like, okay, I read the quote, and something in me agreed with him. Okay, because as okay, so I need to defend the young boy that I was. I saw around me ignorance. I saw around me stupidity. I saw around me violence and hatred, and I saw around me Zionists. Okay, and I agreed in with Mussolini in his diagnosis of the current state of affairs. That people around me, I felt, were generally hateful, stupid, and should not be given the opportunity to decide where society should go, and this is what I wrote. Okay, now I went through a process. Interesting. Okay, I will continue the story. This is where I wanted to start. So in the last few years, I started thinking about the word democracy, which, as I now explained, became a bit problematic in my mind. Do we really want democracy? Because I see around so many people who are hateful and ignorant. Do I want them to have power? And this is a question I think we should ask ourselves. If we are radicals, we should ask this question. Now I have a different answer. Now the answer that I give myself is that we should empower everybody. Yes. And when people are empowered, when everyone, when other animals are empowered, then they will not be ignorant. They will not be hateful. I think radically about what's going on. I think about the root of the thing. What is the root of the problem? Why are people ignorant? Why are people violent? Why are people hateful? Why are people racist? Why is there separation? Why is there all this? And I think it is because people do not have power. When people do not have power, then they do not have the ability to learn. They do not have the time and the energy to think. They do not have the tools to do it. They have been taken.
They don't have the opportunity to
Yes.
use this faculty. And when the Native Americans would laugh
So
at the
yes.
Europeans, because in their tribe or nation, they would often be invited to take part in discussion about where do we go, what do we do about this problem, and they would exercise this faculty from a young age
Exactly.
in a true free manner.
Yes.
Not the teacher saying, explain why blah blah blah.
Exactly. So we see how. Okay, so what I wanted to say, what my point was, is that this term democracy, okay, this was corrected. What do they tell us democracy is? Democracy is where once every 4 years you go to the vote box and you put a note in the vote box, and the note says the name of a party, and the party has some politicians in it, and the politicians gather in some building, and in this building they do some ceremonies and some rituals, and those rituals, the result of them is a document, a big document that is called the Israeli Rule Book, and this rule book is enforced by some organizations called the police and the courts, which we have a lot to say about, and maybe I will plug the episode that Elik and I recorded yesterday with Gaia Dan, who is a very amazing young woman who is revolutionary, and she is very active. And we talked a lot about how the institutions, the Zionist Israeli institutions, treated her and Palestinians and other activists in protests that she went to. And we see the way that they just enforce horrible supremacist and violent rules on these people. So please watch that. That will be up in a few days. So what was my point? Okay, so they teach us that this is what democracy is. And this brings me back to liberals who only want to look at the aesthetics of things. Oh, this looks very good, and they teach us about separation of the authorities, right?
Separation of powers.
Separation of powers, right? And they teach us the civics studies, and
which is liberal indoctrination.
Yeah, just liberal propaganda. Yes, and they teach us that this is what democracy means, and then it's very easy for someone like me to be against democracy, because I don't feel like this helps anything. And then I started doing this exercise of thinking, okay, this true exercise, not the exercise in the fucking homework. Okay, what is democracy? And this is a process, okay? But becoming more aware of Marxist thinking helped me with this. And the way that I see democracy now, I will try to say it in a very concise way, is that we empower everyone. Is that everyone gets to participate in the decision equally and freely in the way that we organize society, in the way that we allocate, in the way that we determine where we want to go and what we want to do. And I think that once you exclude some people or other animals from this process, then you disempower them, you make them weak. When you make them weak, you make them violent. Because the only way to regain your power when you have been weakened, when this power was taken away from you, is to use violence, or maybe to use force, because violence is also a term that was distorted. You see all the terms where it's distorted. But this process of rethinking about the term of democracy also empowered me and also made me understand what was going on in the world more and made me more compassionate and loving towards these people that I used to look at from above to say, oh, these people are stupid and they should not have power. No, I do not want to think that anymore. And I did think it to my shame. To my shame, I did think it, and there are traces of this in my mind, and I want to clean it up. And the way that I want to clean it up is to rethink everything. And this is the radical in my opinion.
Beautiful. And I think when we talk about empowering everyone, another way of saying this is that decisions should be made in common about what? Not about who gets to rule us for the next one, but about power.
Mhm.
And the most important question that I think we can ask about power, and the most important question in general, this is my Marxism kicking in. We might argue about this, but we our goal is the same, and the question how we get there, and I think we get there when decision is made in common and in equality about what? About how we distribute the resources and how we divide the labor and how we distribute the fruits of the labor among us. This decision needs to be made in common. And
Yes.
in liberal democracy, this is the one decision that, well, one of many decisions, but this is
The main one.
the main one that is not made in common. We can decide about how we divide the labor between us. And of course, this decision is not made in equality and in common. Because if it was, you would never see this. Well, you would never see someone just cleaning toilets their whole lives,
Yes. Yes.
losing their humanity, being
Yes.
humiliated, doing just that, just this one thing. That could not have been. That cannot be the result of a common, equal decision, deliberate a discussion among all of us about how we're going to divide the work between us.
Yes. Nobody asks
And we
the
don't
simple
have
people what they want.
and we don't have democracy until we have a common and equal decision about this.
So I think about everything. I think about everything, but I
And that would
do.
be radical democracy. Would be
Yes.
democracy that gets to the root of things, as opposed to liberal democracy, where the root of things is what it is, and actually the whole structure is what it is. And only here, superficially, we can move some things around. No, we want from the bottoms up
Yes.
democracy.
Yes. 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 We want to change the system from the root because the root is rotten, and this fact that the root is rotten is causing all these problems. And I think another aspect of being a radical is that you look at the problem. So, okay, so let me tell another thing from my own personal history. I look back at Facebook memories. Okay, it brings back the post that you wrote, and I look at myself from 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever, and I'm like, oh, this guy is radical, or oh, this guy doesn't understand something. It's an interesting process. Maybe this is my historical research. I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a bit self-centered. I don't know, but I try to rethink
Mine is
things.
self-centered as well. Go ahead.
Okay, you will explain this now. So one of the things that I noticed is that I tried to play the game for a long time, and I think this made me in some certain not. I don't know if I was quote unquote a liberal like in my essence, or not in my essence, but really a liberal. I think I flirted with liberalism and I was captured by liberalism. Maybe everyone with the liberal is captured by liberalism. But I thought that the way to solve the problems is to play the game well enough. And I think living in Israel, these things they repeat themselves all the time. Like Benjamin Netanyahu has been the prime minister of Israel with small gaps from the year 1996, which was 1 year after Yitzhak Rabin, who is also a liberal, but Zionist left, whatever. But he was the head commander of the Israeli military. So you see, the former head commander of the Israeli military and the minister of security.
And the vicious oppressor of the first Intifada, who
Yes,
said,
break their
gave
legs.
the order, break their legs, and
Yes.
soldiers took Palestinians and they took rocks, and it's on video, and they broke their legs.
So this guy is considered a leftist, was considered a leftist in Israel, and he was assassinated because he was too much of a leftist. This was in 95, and this was in the full support and maybe even organization of Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu was part of this. What part did he have in this? I don't know, but he had a part in this. And 1 year later, he became the prime minister. And ever since, it has been almost 30 years, right? And of those 30 years, he was prime minister of Israel for almost 20, right? Like So nothing is changing. Nothing is changing. Things are changing, but only for the worst. Only for the worst. And when you see this happening, you say, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't play the game anymore. Maybe the only winning move is not to play." And I think people are realizing this all over the world. Like in the US, people more and more and more are seeing that participating in this stupid game of deciding between one fascist and another fascist, and deciding between one capitalist and another capitalist, maybe it will not lead us to anything good. Maybe. And they are waking up, and I think Palestine is helping them wake up, and the fact that Joe Biden is fully on board with the genocide and what's going on here and now is waking people up to see, oh, maybe he's a bad guy. Maybe they're both bad guys. Maybe Trump and Biden are both bad guys, and we're just deciding between two bad guys, and maybe we need to change the game so that something meaningful will change.
Shout out to Noam Chomsky, who has really good quotes about this precisely. He took some quotes from during the 17th century, there was a civil war in England, and this was very much the rise of liberalism, the rise of the bourgeoisie in England.
17th century.
17th century, so
Okay.
1600, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he has, it's not his research, he took it from another historian, I forgot his name, but Noam Chomsky, he quotes this a lot. So you have these elites fighting each other, the royalists and the parliament, who are the bourgeois kind of, and they're fighting each other. And then you have the more popular stirrings, and they wrote, it was a very radical time because this moment of warfare, of class war, open class war, there was a gap to suddenly be free, and it was a time of real radical stuff going on in terms of gender relations, in terms of social relations, and you had people writing pamphlets. And one of the pamphlets said, "We don't want to choose who will rule us, these gentlemen or these royalists. We want to rule ourselves." And hundreds of years later, we have Biden, we have Trump, we have Netanyahu, we have Gantz. We don't have even.
So in Israel, we don't even get to
We don't
choose
even
who
get to
rules
choose.
us. It's decided in advance.
And you can go back hundreds of years to this person, probably anonymous people, not philosophers, not just pamphleteers who wrote these pamphlets and wrote, "I don't want to choose who gets to rule over me. I just don't want to be ruled." And it's still relevant and it's still the key. And I want to maybe at this point congratulate us for talking not so much about Israel-Palestine, but looking at the big picture. No, I'm happy. I'm happy. This was a lot.
I think it's good to use it as an example to
Of course, it's going to be our point
analyze.
of reference. Right?
Yes, point of reference, exactly.
Yeah, so thank you, Alon, for coming over.
Thank you so much for
He's
having
not just a guest on a podcast, he's a dear friend, and you'll see him again, or I'll be on his podcast, or whatever.
Yeah, I will definitely have you on my channel as well. I think this is maybe I should say some things from the heart. Okay, we talked from the mind a lot. I want to say some things from the what?
It's me, yeah, talking from the mind. Go ahead.
I also am cerebral. Okay, so maybe let's go down one step and talk from the heart. So I think this is a very meaningful encounter, very meaningful relationship that is starting, and I feel like with you I can have conversations that I couldn't have with anyone before. And like last night, we were talking, and Dan challenged me on the subject of my scientism or my intellectualism, and me being kind of enchanted with math and science and art, and that did not convince me to stop being enchanted with this, and I don't think he ever will be able to convince me.
And I was challenged as well to think about, okay, talking about the smile, the fake smile and the real smile, and talk about respect, what respect would mean in a class society, not a class society. I was challenged to think, well, why are you throwing away science? Maybe we have a radical science.
Yes. And I think you saw my real smile when I was talking about science. Like when I talk about quantum mechanics, when I talk about math, when I talk about art, I think I have a real smile. I feel it inside. And maybe this is the way to differentiate, right? To see, oh, is this someone smiling for real? Is this someone laughing for real? Is this someone crying for real? Is this someone feeling for real? Okay, I need to listen. Is this someone faking it? I don't want to listen. So I think that we can have these discussions, and I really appreciate you for challenging me and for having real discussions, which I'm thirsty and hungry for, because arguing with all the different forms of fascists, arguing with people who want to defend the abuse of non-human animals, arguing with Zionists, arguing with capitalists who want to defend the hierarchies of our economy. This is not intellectually engaging. I'm sorry, it's not. It's a thing that I do because I feel that it needs to be done, but it's not a thing that I do because it gives me, it nourishes me. And our conversations, I feel they nourish me. So I want to thank you for that deeply, and I want to continue having this ongoing conversation more and more and more. And I hope that people watching this can learn something from our conversations. Maybe even if they learn 10% of what I learned, then I think that this is enough because I feel like I'm learning so much.
I want to thank you, and for the same reason, and really to stop and acknowledge how we spend so much time just fighting the other side that we don't stop and develop things among us. Just look at ourselves and take our thinking forward.
Yes.
With some just free imagination and playfully, just being playful about it.
Yes.
Everything
And respectful.
and respect.
Yes.
Yes. Everything is constant war. Either I'm arguing with someone or I'm studying in order to win the next argument. We're so lonely here.
And I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah,
I want to put an emphasis on building this,
Yes.
constructing this connection.
This is a whole other podcast about dialogue or struggle. And I'm through with dialogue with a settler colonial society, honestly. I don't think there's any future to that. I think a settler colonial society, their consciousness is going to be the consciousness of a settler colonial society.
Yes.
It's not some individuals we might be able to influence, but there's no political future there. I'm through with dialogue. I am, of course, going to continue the dialogue with my friends and family because you can't choose
Because
your
you have,
family. I have to try. But I'm through with kind of throwing my whole essence into that. We need to struggle, whatever that means. That's a whole other podcast. We need to keep our sanity, and we need to connect to each other
Yes.
and talk to each other more
Yes.
and develop ourselves, and not so much worry about them and what they think and how we beat the argument, but
This
do
is
our
how
thing.
this is how we empower ourselves.
Yes, do our thing, build our community, build
Yes.
our ideas, and let that influence indirectly without clashing like that.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
We'll continue talking about this.
We have a lot to talk about. All right.
Okay.
So that's all for today. I have a good feeling about this recording. I hope everything was recorded well, because like I said, this is guerrilla warfare, very primitive equipment. And thank you for listening. If you made it this far, take care and be good.
Bye bye, everybody, and thank you.